Hey everybody, it's Josh Rutledge, your co-host for FearScape Paranormal Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to support us more, please head over to our website, FearScapePodcast.com. There you can click on store and browse some really awesome t-shirts and maybe pick a couple up, or even go to our Patreon page and see how you can support us monthly. We love bringing you awesome content just as much as you like listening to it. Enjoy the show.
Hello, I'm so glad you could join us. I hope you brought your blanket to hide under. The spooky crew is going to discuss things and events from other realms. Ghosts, cryptids, aliens. Be sure to hold your blanket extra tight as the boys take you deep into the FearScape.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another monstrous episode of FearScape Paranormal Podcast. That's right, your home for all things spooky, weird, and cryptozoology. Ha ha ha! I am your host, Stefan Gearhart, and I am joined, as usual, by my human-like co-host, Mr. Josh Rutledge.
I mean, to be fair, a lot of cryptids are human-like as well, so that's not really a good compliment.
No, it is. Well, yeah, that's the point. You're not fully human.
Human-like is what? I walk on 2 feet?
Yeah, you're not quite human, too.
Not quite.
The sequel from Disney. But yeah, we got a really fun episode for you guys. We had an opportunity this past weekend to go to West Virginia.
West Virginia. Not East Virginia.
Mountain Mama, take me home. That's where we went. And I sang it the whole weekend. We went out there with Santosh, and Santosh will be on next week because our main purpose for going out there was to do some Mothman hunting. And so we'll be discussing Mothman next week with Santosh, hopefully, and that'll be fun. But the other reason we were going out there, which is the first thing we went to go do, was to go take a look at the Flatwoods Monster sighting, which also happened in West Virginia. If you've watched Project Blue Book, you'll know that was the second episode, I believe, they focused on the Flatwoods Monster. So very, very interesting. We got a chance to talk to one of the guys that works there at the Braxton, West Virginia Tourist Bureau, which also houses the Flatwoods Monster Museum. And so we'll be getting to hear some stuff from him, as well as telling you guys about the Flatwoods and all that stuff. But before we get to all that, we got to do our normal jam, man. You know what I'm saying?
Yep, Jimmy Jam.
Jimmy Jam on the Space Jam Part 2. But yeah, so we're going to jump right into the psychic word of the week.
And now, the psychic word of the week.
All right, so as you guys know, we have our psychic word of the week, which comes from the Encyclopedic Psychic Dictionary from the lovely June Bletzer, PhD, rest in peace, Honey Bear. This week, as we flipped through the pages and did some bibliomancy as usual, we stopped on the letter T and looked down on the page we were on, and the phrase that we grabbed is interesting. It's called Testament of Solomon.
It sounds like a cult.
Yeah, it does. Okay. Not going to shut up, Stefan. All right. So this reads, the many entities of the etheric world that Solomon contacted and conquered by the use of his magic ring served as proof of life in the etheric world and proof of communicating with the same.
I didn't know Solomon had a magic ring.
I didn't either. I didn't know he was a Green Lantern.
Yeah, I mean, or like, you know, one ring to rule them all type situation.
Maybe, but you know, yeah, I mean, he was like the king, right? So
right.
So I mean, he gave out all these other rings.
It's what all, you know, like the whole Masonic Lodge and everything is based on.
Yeah, the Keys of Solomon, the lesser and greater Keys of Solomon. A lot of magic is based on that, and worship and ritual and all sorts of craziness. Yeah.
So he was quite literally the most magical person.
Yeah, literally.
history.
Well, according to his testament, he was. Very interesting, though. Yeah, I never heard of a magic ring before, but I do like it's very interesting that it shows that through his ring, he was able to communicate with the etheric world, which is kind of cool.
Well, you think about several episodes back, we talked about shapeshifters. And I remember several of the shapeshifter accounts had to do with magical objects that the wearer would put on that would allow them to shapeshift. Like there was a magical belt and something else.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
So I'm wondering how much of that with like a magical ring, if like that gave, without the ring, just Solomon. With the ring, Super Solomon.
Isn't there, I think there's like an old cartoon called like the Seven... Oh, goodness. Theologian would know this. It's called like the Seven Powers or Super Seven or something like that.
Was that the Planet Earth people?
No, but it was like a bunch of different gods. And not gods, but ancient things. So like Isis was a part of it, I think. I'm pretty sure Solomon was a superhero. It was like kind of like that.
Well, and doesn't like Justice League of the Future get like rings that they can use?
Yeah, they do. They get the Legion. The Legion has rings that makes them all able to fly.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, this was like I think made by the same company that did Flash Gordon cartoon and Defenders of the Earth and stuff like that. I think it was
Defenders.
I think it was called the Super Seven. It wasn't on very long, but it was like, I don't know, like different gods or like ancient dudes that were the superheroes. But yeah, anyways.
So
Testament of Solomon.
Right. If we went there talking about a magical ring, imagine what we'll do. Talking about. So yeah, this is good stuff though.
Yeah, it is. All right. Well, talking about some good stuff, I got a doozy of a spooky news.
All right.
So get ready and let's move into spooky news. So this one comes from The Guardian, so I don't think you're ready just for the headline alone. All right, so it says, Space Oddity. Mexican group claims alien base offers hurricane protection.
Okay.
Yep, I told you. So this says, Gulf Coast cities have little to fear from extreme weather, thanks apparently to extraterrestrials lurking underwater. And this is comes from Cody Copeland in Mexico City. Cody says, as communities on Mexico's Gulf Coast brace themselves for what is predicted to be a grueling hurricane season, there are a group of stargazers in the northeastern state of Tamaulipas are confident that a unique form of disaster preparation will keep their city safe. Members of the Association of Scientific UFO, man, I'm almost talking like Alan Greenfield, UFOs, UFO research of that city believe that an interdimensional underwater base of extraterrestrial origin has protected the coastal cities of Ciudad Madero and Tampico from hurricanes for more than 50 years.
Wow.
The president, Juan Carlos Ramon Lopez Diaz, it's a lot of names, claims to have visited the base, known as Amupac, via astral projection, which he says he induced through meditation and pescatarian diet. It's also recommendable to ascend ancestral constructions like temples and pyramids that have stairs at a 45-degree angle, he says. Hills sloping at such a gradient will also do if one does not live near pre-Columbian ruins. He also says that the city Ciudad Madero suffered 4 direct landfalls in the 20th century, including Hurricane Inez in 1966, which killed 74 people in Mexico alone. Lopez and his allies believe that the base was established sometime after that. Explanations of exactly how and why the alien visitors are protecting this city vary, even among fellow investigators. Lopez believes not Amupac itself, but the esoteric power of the members' belief in the base. The collective mind is charged with the concept, so it generates a large force field of repulsion, he said. There is also talk of magnetic fields and a series of meter-long bars of aluminum, iron, and other things at Miramar Beach. yada, yada, yada. Others claim that the aliens are only interested in protecting their base, and Ciudad Madero is just lucky they took a liking to this small corner of the galaxy. This theory fails to explain, however, what threat a terrestrial weather event might pose to a structure with no form in our physical dimension, but still others simply accept the apparently inexplicable. If science gives us no explanation, we will get one from magic, says Marco Flores, the former official historian of Tampico.
Well, that dude sounds awesome.
Yeah.
And if you happen to be listening, I'd love to have you on the show. But secondly, I read something somewhere because my kids were asking about waves because they ask about everything. And so I was trying to talk to them about how waves are formed and all that kind of stuff. And I read when I was reading into it that in a single wave, not like a huge tidal wave, but like just a single wave that goes up on the beach, there's enough stored energy in a single wave to power all of the United States for 1 year. So if you're an interdimensional being and you have some sort of a base underwater and there's a lot of wave activity as part of a hurricane, it stands to reason that energy could be impactful to your base.
Yeah, for sure. All very, very interesting. Good luck, guys. Hope you take along your phones to take pictures and videos, because I'd love to see this base. Not that I don't believe that one's there, but
it's like we were talking about before we started recording, right? So much of this stuff hits you, and you almost feel like, yeah, but then there's the other part of you that's like, well, maybe.
Well, yeah, and then there's this third part that's like, oh, I kind of really want it to be.
Yeah, exactly.
How cool would it be to have this protective base, like, to be able to go to in times of danger? That could be almost, maybe even help during, if there was nuclear fallout.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, who knows? So, and I just, the thing that I find interesting is usually when it comes across these, like, secret alien bunkers or bases, they're purported to have been there for thousands of years.
Right.
This has been there for maybe 4
50,
decades.
Yeah. Well, and it reminds me of the Abyss.
Oh, I love that movie.
So they go down to I don't remember. I think it's a research station.
I think and they were near the Marianas Trench, right?
And then of course they don't. Anybody who hasn't seen the movie The Abyss, because I know it is an older movie and we do have some younger listeners, but it's a really good movie, and I don't want to ruin it for you. But let's just say they find something living in the Marianas Trench, and it is an amazing thing. But they don't of course talk about how long it's been there. But it makes you wonder, all these really deep parts. I don't know how deep it is close to the city in Mexico, but all these deep parts of the ocean. I think I read somewhere that we've only explored like 4% of the Earth's oceans.
Yeah.
Which is minuscule.
Insane. It's insane.
So
now, when when they talk about that only exploring 4%, do they speak about just ground level, or are they talking about the entire body of water?
They're talking about the entire body of water.
Okay, because that it's like I don't care about just the water. I'm like, I want to see the stuff on the bottom. Like,
yeah, well, I think the ocean is kind of like if you say, I'm going to explore this bowl of cereal.
Yeah,
you eat the cereal. You don't really like crack open the bowl to see what the bowl looks like.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I think about it, it's like exploring the Earth. Does that mean we have to fly into every inch of the sky to say we've explored the Earth, right?
Well, I think the difference there is that we can point things and see most of the things in the sky and the Earth.
This is true.
We can't do that for the ocean.
This is true. But I do like that the ocean seems to be our biggest foundation of new species that we find all the time.
Although I was watching this thing about the rainforest, and they said that every year, like 40-something new species of bird or bug is found.
Bird or bug. Be it bird or be it bug.
Yeah. But also plug for Sequest. A great show. Would love to see it be remade.
I love Sequest. Especially when they had that clone on. He was my favorite character.
My favorite character was the dolphin.
Oh, yeah. Darwin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love that show. Roy Schreider. Love you, brother. They were like, oh, you're in Jaws. You can do underwater. Anyways, way off topic.
Way off topic.
Way off topic. Let's go ahead and move into the UFO sighting of the week so we can get moving on to Flatwoods. All right, Josh, what do we got for the UFO goodness this week?
Yeah, so I thought we would do something a little different. We've done this before, but I just wanted to look at, so MUFON, you can go out to their website and sign up to receive their newsletter.
Right.
And so one of the things they send people who subscribe is a monthly recap. And so we're looking at June, and I just thought it would be interesting to look and see, how many reported sightings have there been or were there in June, and then to try to think about it and extrapolate that out across a year, how many there are a year and that sort of thing. And again, you have to note that, number one, MUFON is not the only reporting mechanism for things, and so they don't I don't think take into account things that are reporting outside of MUFON.
Yeah, if people aren't doing double or triple the work, putting them on other places.
Right. And then secondly, not everything gets reported.
Right.
Right.
Or things just get reported to the police or
Right.
Or something, and they don't even make like a journalistic
Right.
inquiry.
Or they report it to the newspaper, and the newspaper's like, "Hey, we got to put eight pages of ads because nobody reads our newspaper anymore." June saw a total of 601 UFO sightings through MUFON.
And that's around the world, right?
Around the world.
Ooh, that's a lot, man.
Now, the biggest number, U.S.
Oh, for sure.
The next biggest is Canada, and rounding out the top three is the United Kingdom.
So,
but it's a pretty big leap. So like UK 33, Canada 36, 446 in the United States.
Well, I mean, we have
a much larger area to cover.
We have a much larger area, as well as the Southwest is just full of, and mountains, and we have such a broad topography. It's really, really interesting.
The highest number by state, so I'll just do the top three. California with 56, Florida with 30, and Texas with 26.
It's just crazy to me to think 601 for the entire world, but over 30 days.
Yeah.
That's just 30 days.
That's 30 days, right. Just for curiosity's sake, since we're in Kentucky, there were 3 in Kentucky reported in June.
And they were just ours, right?
Yeah, probably.
That and the guy from Burkesville.
And then I also found, so they break it down for the type, or the shape of the UFO.
Oh, that's interesting.
So this is really cool. So 97 reported a circle shape, 63 were a sphere, 55 were other. But I won't read through the entire list, but there's there's star-like, which was 41, oval with 35, cylinder, 18, a cigar shape, which I would equate cigar and cylinder as the same.
Similar, yeah.
But was 13. Boomerang, which I would think would be like the triangle type shape, is 11. There was 34 of the triangle.
The Tic Tac one I see on
Tic Tac
there.
is 7. A bullet or missile is 5. Chevron, I've not heard of the chevron. I guess that's really the triangle or boomerang, though. I mean, it really kind of falls into that kind of V shape. 5.
It's a gas station shaped.
Does
that just age me?
The lowest amount on here with 2 is cone. I've never heard of a cone-shaped UFO.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe somebody was wearing a dunce cap.
Or it's a traffic cone.
Yeah.
That somebody put some fireworks in.
But anyway, so just taking a look at those numbers for June, and if we extrapolate that out, I mean, what is that? 12 times 6 roughly is 12 times 3 is 36. 36 and 36 is what, 72?
Mm-hmm.
So 7,200 sightings a year if you just take June as an example.
Yeah.
And that's just one
Oh,
organization for
yeah,
one year.
organization in 1 year.
Right. So, I mean, they're...
And then just think of all the thousands that people don't say Or they didn't even, like, they're like, oh, I'm just seeing something.
Right.
Right.
So, I mean, I've reached out to MUFON a couple of times. If anybody's listening who's a member of MUFON, I'd love to get in touch with somebody who actually does UFO investigations, because I think it would be really interesting to know kind of what goes into an investigation for MUFON.
Yeah.
You know, what do they look at? Do they?
I mean, I've thought about signing up myself as an investigator and some things like that, but we're busy, so I kind of want to ask somebody else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's one thing to read the handbook. It's another thing to actually talk to somebody who's been in the field.
Yeah, especially anyone that's been in the field for a good solid minute or two.
So, but yeah, so that's our report for June. Like I said, if you go out to MUFON's website and sign up for free, plug in your email, they'll send you these reports, and they're really cool to see. And one of the other thing they also include in here is they include some like sightings and kind of hit sightings and that sort of thing, and pictures of various sightings that were submitted. So it's just a really cool little newsletter that MUFON puts together for free.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, they even have the distribution by how far away people thought it was and stuff like that. It's really whoever is the analyst that does all this and puts all this together. I mean, he's got to pull together 601 different sightings, right, for just June alone to put this newsletter together.
He or she.
He or she. Or they. Yeah. Or alien.
Maybe that's what they're doing. They've got the Greys working for them.
It is. But yeah, thank you for that information, Josh. It's always a pleasure to again remind us we're not alone in the universe or with the way we think. So.
And really that what you see in the night sky, 601 other people in the month of June saw it too. Yeah. Right.
Yes. I'm anxious to see what July's is.
So don't be afraid to share those sightings.
That's right. And of course, if you want to share that, you can always go to FearScapePodcast.com. We have a link that says submit a sighting, and you can just put it right in there. It helps us build our own little database, and that includes ghosts, cryptids, the whole 9 yards. But yeah, let us know. Anyways, let's go ahead and move into Creepy Catch-Up, because I have had a week.
Creepy Catch-Up. Creepy Catch-Up. Creepy Catch-Up. Y'all, it's creepy.
All right, so
do you mind? I have very little.
That's what I was saying. So if you got the smaller one this week, you go first.
I'll go first. Yep, it's smaller because it's cold outside. So, so I've only had like two things this week. One, I was laying on the couch last night with my kids. We were watching something. We were watching a lot of these resin art things. I don't know if you watch those. They're really cool. But,
yeah, they are.
But we were watching something. It helps them calm down and go to sleep. So we were watching that, and out of the corner of my eye, this is like 8:30 at night or so. So it's dusk, but it's not dark. So there's a little bit of light coming into the room, and out of the corner of my eye, I see a shadow just kind of walk between, like, down the hallway, go right past the couch, and then head to the basement, which we know that we both feel like there's something down here in the basement. We did an Estes sessions a couple weekends ago. We got some kits with that. Likes to play with the cat. So I think in that Estes session, even the name came up with John. So we've just been referring to him as John. So when I come downstairs, just say, "Hey, John, how you doing today?" And I just talk to him. So.
That's the way to go, man.
And then the only other thing that I had is I was laying in bed last night going to sleep, and it was late. I had to work late last night, and so it was like close to midnight. And I was just kind of laying there, and my phone, because I had forgotten to put it back on Do Not Disturb, buzzed. It vibrated, and it kind of startled me awake, but I didn't open my eyes. In my mind's eye, if you will, I could see my room. It's like I could see the curtains, and I could see my wife laying there next to me. And then all of a sudden there was like, do you remember that night that we did the Estes session? And I said that I saw like waves of energy coming across.
Yeah. While I was doing Reiki.
So I saw that coming at me from like the curtained area of my room. And then I saw I never opened my eyes, but in my mind's eye, I saw like this figure standing on my wife's side of the bed. And these like waves of energy were coming at me. And I just kind of went back to sleep.
I wonder, because if they were similar waves, I mean, I was sending healing energy, and so I wonder if that entity, if it is here, it could still even also be your grandfather. We talked about that. But sending healing energy to try to make sure you guys are healthy and stuff along that lines, whether it's a family member or UT, ET, whatever.
Yeah. So, but that's my only two things that I've had.
So I've had a very ghosty ghost week, and I know I jinxed myself because last week I was like, oh, I can't believe I'm back at my office and nothing's happened. Well,
yeah, exactly.
Good Lord, everything has happened. I have, just being back, I've been watching my pen fly around again like it did with the marker. Every day something's kind of happened along those lines. Stuff's falling off my little side tables and stuff like that. Just weird fluctuations in the energy, like when things would happen. Like I would notice like the pen would move and my monitor would flicker as if it was using that energy, right? Some things like that. But the best thing happened the other day. So there's 3 of us at the office. One of the guys called off sick. My boss had to leave for 2 hours. So it was me by myself.
By yourself.
By myself. So first of all, I hear, like, I don't know, I'm maybe like 30 minutes into being by myself, and I hear a knocking coming from the inside of the right bathroom. And I was like, do you need let out? Like,
I mean, is that the bathroom where you heard stuff before?
It's the exact same one where the toilet paper flew off the thing, everything. This is the same one, and it happened multiple times until I got up, walked over, opened the door, held it, and stopped. Never knocked again after that.
So it was like stuck in there.
I think so. I don't know. The other thing is I was like, oh man, nobody's here. I could do whatever I want. So I start singing. I was listening to Jekyll and Hyde, which is my favorite musical. And so I'm just singing it. And it's this big old building, so the ceilings are high. The acoustics are amazing. I'm having a good time, and I'm tearing ass through this song, man. Like, I'm just killing it. And I get done, and I kid you not, Josh, I hear.
Wow.
And I was like, shut up, dude. And I mean, from top to bottom, I got goosebumps.
But isn't, I mean, your all's office is shared with the other offices,
nope.
right?
No.
You're the
I
only
am literally the only person in this entire building. It's just me. And this was not coming from outside. I heard it as if it was like right next to me.
Wow.
And it scared. First, it startled me. I was like, ugh! And after I still heard it finish. And I was just like, you're welcome. So that happened. And I told Benji, and Benji was like, because he's singing all the time in there too.
Well, it makes me think about, the thing that Andrea said, that the entities like for you to sing to them.
They do, yeah.
And the theory that I have is that some, not all, but some ghosts are actually like UTs,
right?
Camouflage
or
checking
whatever.
in on you or something. So it makes me wonder if they liked what you had to say.
It's possible. I mean, just between Benji and I alone, we're always watching like Broadway videos and stuff. So they could have seen How to Applaud. I mean, any of that stuff a million times over. But the last one that I've got happened in my car. So I don't know if I told you. I just, I got a newish car.
Yep. New to you.
Over the last month or two, and through my research, it said it only had one owner prior, and they said that there was a wreck, that the airbags didn't go off, and there was some bumper damage, but they replaced everything, no problem. It wasn't major damage, and they of course made sure to put in good airbags and stuff like that. Well, as I was like looking through the Carfax and looking through all the stuff, I see that this car went up for auction. And I was like, well, if it didn't get totaled, why would he, especially them telling me that it was like minimal damage. It was supposed to be this old guy from Jersey. He lived in Florida, though. I'm like, did he die? Because if the airbag didn't go off, even if it's minimal damage, he could have died.
Right.
Like, is what I'm thinking. I'm like,
he could have had a heart attack.
I'm like, this dude died in this car. And that's why they auctioned it off, because they just had to get rid of it. They didn't know what to do with it because he's dead. And I'm like, man, I have a haunted car. Of course I do. And I've always been thinking about that since the get-go. So I'm driving the other day, and I noticed something over the side of the road. I don't even remember what it was. Could have been a squirrel. It could have been anything. I have ADHD, but I get distracted, and I didn't realize that I had swerved. And I've got my hands on the wheel. All of a sudden, I feel my wheel turn. Like it turns, and I'm like, and it goes, and I saw a car was coming. God, I hope Sarah's not listening. But like a car, and so I swerved back over, and I was like, and at that same time, I smelled Old Spice, like the original old school splash it on your face Old Spice, and I was like, thank you, like, and I just accepted the fact. Oh, I think my car might be haunted, unless it was the UT following me again and was in the car with me. But the Old Spice is what sold it for me. I mean, some dude from Jersey, of course he's wearing Old Spice or Brute. It's gonna be one or the other.
Right. Anything with a big wooden cap on it.
Anything you have to splash in your hands and rub together to put on your faces. But yeah, so that was my week. And, had other things, of course. I mean, since this entire week, I mean, I have seen reflections out of my glasses. I've seen shadows. Just everything under the sun at my workplace has been happening this week.
Now, I will say, in leading up to the Point Pleasant trip, I did see a lot of extra kind of out of the corner of my eye, like, something's there, but when I go to look at it, I can't, I don't see anything.
Yep.
Almost as if like it ramped up even knowing that I was going to be going to Point Pleasant.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, yes. So, but yeah, so that's my creepy catch up. Been a very interesting week because I've had essentially dry spells for the past couple weeks, and so this one I haven't had good ghosty experiences in a while.
Like I told you and Santosh a few days ago, I mean, I definitely feel like I'm getting back into my groove of like.
Oh yeah, so am I, and I think that is psychically bouncing off of one another as well. So, but so that's creepy catch up. That's where we're at.
Yep.
And so bear with us. We're going to take a quick ad break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about the Flatwoods Monster.
Hey everyone, Josh here. Do you feel like mainstream options for things such as yoga, meditation, or documentaries and films meant to expand your mind are lacking? Have you heard of Gaia? Gaia is the largest resource of consciousness expanding videos. Both Stefan and I have watched several of the series, documentaries, and films available on topics such as the secret space program, channeling interdimensional beings, and alien encounters. We're just now exploring the over 8,000 films, shows, and classes available to stream on your favorite devices. To get your 10-day free trial of Gaia, go to FearScapePodcast.com/Gaia offer. Again, that's FearScapePodcast.com/GAIA offer.
Warning. The topic portion of tonight's episode of The Flatwoods Monster was recorded in a small hotel room in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. So as the sound quality may not be as good as you're used to, the information is still on par. Stay spooky. All right, thanks for sticking around, blanket huggers. Like we said before the break, we're going to be talking about the Flatwoods Monster, and if you listened here before the break, we got a chance to head out to Point Pleasant and West Virginia in general, and one of the spots we got to check out was Flatwoods, West Virginia. We'll have that interview with the guy from the Flatwoods Monster Museum here in a little bit, though we did not get to go out to the actual spot. It's private property, and I guess that's for the good because I heard he's not a nice guy. Isn't that right, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, if unless you want to be chased around by, a guy with a shotgun, I wouldn't recommend it. So
yeah. So, but anyway, so what do we got for people that aren't aware of the Flatwoods Monster, or their only idea comes from the episode of the Project Blue Book?
Yeah. So just so everybody's clear, this happened 14 years prior to the whole Mothman thing, which is really. When you talk about West Virginia cryptids, a lot of people immediately go to Mothman and sometimes forget about the Flatwoods Monster. So this happened on September 12th, 1952, which is kind of funny, at least personal for me, that my dad's birthday, he was born on September 10th, 1952. So I don't think that he's the Flatwoods Monster, but...
Well, I mean, I will say that our friend at the Flatwoods Monster Museum, Les Odell, said that a doctor owns the property now. What if it was the Flatwoods Monster who took on the guise of a doctor and he delivered your dad?
That would be a stretch, but stranger things, so.
Yeah. But I was gonna also say, one of the cool things about West Virginia is home to quite a number of cryptids, much like Kentucky, how we've got the wild man and the dog man and the goat, the goat man and things like that. West Virginia does too. And I had learned about one that I don't think I had heard was about like the Grafton monster and things like that. But yeah, everyone focuses on Flatwoods. Now, why do you, or I mean, they focus on Mothman, but you and I both think that this Flatwoods monster is a remarkable story, especially because it combines, again, this idea of a cryptid as well as UFO kind of related things. So,
well, and in all actuality, when we get into it, the actual account does not imply cryptid at all.
Yeah.
So, all right. So to kind of jump into it. So again, this happened September 12th, 1952 in Flatwoods, West Virginia, which is a very rural part of the state, in the Appalachian Mountains.
Even now.
Even now. Now, Dr. Hynek, as you know, part of Project Blue Book, he classified this as a close encounter 3. He was the one that came up with the whole close encounter rating scale. And so a close encounter 3 is a close observation with an animate being associated with the object.
Right.
So if it was an animated tin can and that tin can flew into a UFO, then Keel had a close encounter 3. So
tin can, #Hellier.
Yeah. So just before dark on September 12th, some young schoolboys saw a fiery UFO streak across the night sky, and it appeared to land on a nearby hilltop. And so they were rushing to the site. They gathered a few people along the way. One of those individuals, I think, was a teacher, and the other one was a National Guardsman. And so they grabbed them along the way and went up to the side of the mountain, and what they saw was quite impressive. So it's described here. Let me get back. So I'm sorry.
Yeah, because we've got Edward. Yeah, we've got Edward and Fred May and their friend Tommy Hyer. Right.
So so it says that Flatwoods at this point in time is a population of about 300, and it's interesting because a lot of these sightings tend to hit those smaller the smaller towns, because I guess there's less opportunity for a sighting in a smaller town.
Yeah, and
especially at night.
Flatwoods sits pretty close to the center of the state, and it's interesting because even the Flatwoods Monster Museum isn't even in Flatwoods; it's in Sutton, which has pretty much the only downtown in the area.
Right. Yeah. So as you mentioned, that the 4 boys were Tommy Hyer, Freddie May, Edison May, and Neil Nunley. Now, I want to make a quick note here. Tommy Hyer, Hyer, is the same spelling as, I can't remember her first name.
Mary
Hyer, which is the reporter that covered a lot of the Mothman stuff, and of course the Silver Bridge. So
yeah, over there in Point Pleasant, she was like the main to do there.
And so it's just interesting that in both instances, there's a Hyer that was kind of deeply involved with both of those cases.
Yeah, and it's a connection I'd like to research a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, potentially cousins or something, who knows? But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they saw, like I said, this kind of pulsating reddish sphere floating around a hill, and then hover briefly, and then drop behind the crest of the hill. So from the far side of the hill, the bright glow, you could see it as if it was from a landed object. Now, on their way to see what they landed, they were joined by others that had witnessed the flying spectacle, including Kathleen May and her 2 sons, which were already, before, Eugene Lemon and his dog.
Right, that's the National Guardsman there, Eugene Lemon.
Yeah. So the dog ran ahead of the group and was briefly out of sight as it ran around the hill. Suddenly, it was heard barking furiously, and then it came running back down, fleeing with its tail between its legs.
Yeah, and from what I've read, too, I mean, this is a good hunting dog. I mean, it doesn't get scared.
Right. It doesn't run, right? If anything, it would have stayed there and barked, right?
Yep, and growled.
And growled. So, I mean, the only thing, I've seen dogs, West Virginia has bears, right? I've seen dogs encounter bears, and they'll even still kind of bark, back away and bark, but they don't just tuck tail and run, right? It's
not at all.
Right. So then the 2 leading the group, which was Eugene Lemon and Neil Nunley, got to the top of the hill and at first observed what's in quotes here, a big ball of fire 50 feet to their right.
Right.
Others in the others in the group says it was about the size of a house, which when you think about, for people to put it in context, when you think about a house in rural West Virginia, it's probably the same in a lot of rural areas. You typically get those old farmhouses, which are typically like, 2-story, 4-room type houses, that potentially a 1-story, but most of the farmhouses that I've ever seen are, kind of a 2-story. So regardless, it was a big ball of fire.
Yeah. Needless to say, this, if it is a spacecraft, it wasn't doing so good.
Yeah, exactly. So to the group's left on the hilltop, just under the branches of a large oak tree, were 2 small blue lights. At Mrs. May's suggestion, Lemon pointed his flashlight in their direction. To everybody's horror, the flashlight highlighted a grotesque-looking creature with a head shaped like the ace of spades. As several of the witnesses independently described it, inside the head was a circular window, dark, except for 2 lights from which pale blue beams extended straight ahead.
Oh, it's crazy, man. And it's interesting because most of the images of the Flatwood Monster gives it yellow eyes or things like that. But yeah, it is pale blue. And that's so very interesting because so much of what we come across in these things are these red eyes. But even then, these blue eyes were like beams of light, which really pushes this robotic or suit or device of some sort. Yet at the same time, they describe it as grotesque, Yeah. Like,
well, I mean, it's dark. You're like shocked at the sight of everything. I guess something could still be anything that would be outside of your normal acceptance of life, right? So at the time, humans, bears, I think would be just potentially described as grotesque. So, but
this thing was like 10 feet tall. Jeez, man.
Well, yeah. So it just says, it just says over 6 feet tall. Couldn't see anything that resembled arms or legs. It actually, so the creature, what they say, the creature moved towards the witnesses. It seemed to be gliding rather than walking. Seconds later, it changed direction and began heading for the glowing sphere from which it apparently had come from. Now, I'm going to take a more technical approach here and say, what if it's like some sort of a drone sent from the ship?
Well, yeah, it reminds me of Empire Strikes Back, those drones they send to Hoth at first, but that it has legs. So that's like the sphere.
No, I'm saying this the Flatwoods Monster.
Oh,
is
you're
the
saying the
drone.
creature itself that came from the sphere.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a drone, and then so when it's out searching whatever, and it sees the people investigating, it moves to investigate. Something inside the ship says, "No, wait, come on back to the ship. We don't want to engage." And then it turns and goes back to the ship.
Oh, so you're saying like it got orders, so to speak.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
And just because the ship is on fire doesn't mean that it's broken. Like it could be, that's what it looks like when it's working. Like the fireball ships that people report to MUFON and stuff.
Right.
So, anyways, just a personal theory there. So that's what it sounds like to me. It's like it's out checking things out, and the people see it. It's like, oh, I'm going to go check those things out. And then it's like, nope, we don't want to engage. Come on back to the ship. So.
It's like, oh, shit, go, 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 go.
So, it says that all this stuff took place in like the matter of a few moments, during which time Eugene Lemon fainted. The others dragged him with them as they ran from the scene. When it says when they were all interviewed about a half an hour later by a reporter for the Braxton Democrat, the witnesses were barely able to speak. Some sought first aid. Stewart felt the Stewart is the interviewer for the newspaper. Stewart felt that there was no question that they had seen something that had badly frightened them. Yeah, for sure. Says soon afterward, after Lemon had recovered, Stewart and Lemon went to the spot where they had seen the creature in the strange craft. Stewart also noted that there was an acrid odor in the air that irritated his nose and throat. He returned alone to the site first thing the next morning. He found, in quotes, skid marks going down the hill towards a large area of recently matted grass, which seemed to indicate that a large object had rested there. You'll notice here that the difference between this depiction, or if you will, this description, versus what you see in Project Blue Book. Yeah. This doesn't say anything about the scene being burned. Yeah. It just says the grass was matted down like something was there. In Project Blue Book's account, as far as what the TV show depicted, it says that like the area was scorched.
Yes. Yeah, because they also insinuated that that it may have been scorched as well by possible MIBs or something along those lines. Yeah.
So the encounter, which newspapers quickly dubbed the Flatwoods Monster, it took place during a flurry of sightings of unusual flying objects in the region. So again, we've got a UFO flap, right? And then we've got a Flatwoods Monster sighting. So it stands to reason, and I'm reading through John Keel's book, Operation Trojan Horse, and one of the things that like the chapter that I'm in right now that he talks about is that these craft have been coming for like hundreds of years, and they do all these investigatory, is that the right word?
Sure.
Searches. So they search the night sky in patterns. They're really doing more of a scientific type search. And so it kind of alludes to the idea that this thing was just checking things out like other UFOs as a part of the flap. And then, and then of course that happened to get spotted while it was doing its investigation, which led to newspaper articles and all that kind of stuff.
So it's interesting because right now I'm reading They Knew Too Much About Flying Saucers by Gray Barker. He's the one that published Silver Bridge, the first published book account of the Mothman monster. And in this book, which was written, obviously close to 20 years prior, he talks about the Flatwoods monster in it. It's actually how he opens the book, because he was one of the first people on the scene as well, picking up the story. He wasn't too far. He was just over in Clarksburg. But in his book, he talks about the person from the Braxton Democrat. His name was A. Lee Stewart. He was a co-editor. And what's really great is the way that he talks about the skid marks. I wanted to bring this back up because it's really interesting. He says that Lee said that the marks proceeded from the tree where the monster was standing to the location of the orb, like we talked about. He says that if it was indeed some huge person, and they were on skis, that maybe they had slid down the hill, but the summer skier surely was too light in weight, for the skis had not indented the ground. They had only ridden down the tall grass and tossed a few small stones aside. Where the globe had rested, a huge area of grass appeared to have been crushed down. And a lot of residents, that Gray kind of insinuates that a lot of residents tried to come up with stories as a way to discount it, to not let their city be another Roswell. And so like 2 or 3 different people claimed that they had driven their tractor or their car over that, but the skid marks were not car skid marks. There was no tire tread. So that was one of the big things. That's why they said, if anything, it could have been a summer skier, those guys that kind of walk like that on the skis. But even then, they were far too wide. So I wanted to kind of throw in that little bit of information that I read in Gray's book that just stood out to me in regards to those skid marks.
Well, and something else that's, when you think about that, it could be whatever is letting this thing glide. Would imply that it has to have some sort of a downward thrust, right, to lift it off the ground. Right. And so whatever that downward thrust is could also generate those two, not deep tracks, but certainly tracks back to where the ship was located.
For sure. And did we mention that one of the other things is that we had talked about they didn't see arms and legs, but it seemed as if it was floating off of the ground at the bottom of its, as they called it, its dress. So there were no marks for the monster per se, but only for the orb itself. Yeah.
So what also I think is I'll mention here is, and this kind of feeds into another theory that I have, is that so like I said, there's some other flying objects in the region. Bailey Frame, which is the guy's name, Bailey Frame, with an interesting last name, a resident of nearby Birch River, reported seeing a bright orange ball circling over the area where the monster was spotted. It was visible for around 15 minutes before veering off towards the airport at Sutton, where the object was also reported. So the reason I mention this particular piece is because it mentions Birch River, which there is a river, a small river, more like a tributary, if you will, in the area. And so, I've talked to you about it. I've talked to our good friend Santosh about it. But my theory is that when you look at a lot of the encounters, where it's like not just sightings, but actual like encounters, there's a really close proximity to water. And I just wondered if it's possible that these craft are landing to get water, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe that's why it had blue lights, because they have a special light detection that allows them to detect water.
Right. And then even then I do come across, so I kind of, while you were talking, I was looking up why sometimes it shows orange lights, because some people have also written that the claim said it was orange lights, that it was an orange beam, or maybe it was blue eyes and then it turned into an orange beam. But yeah, it's possible. One of the other things that actually the very next chapter in Gray Barker's book goes on to talk about Brush Creek, California, where 3 different people saw a flying saucer that landed near Brush Creek, and that a man got out of it, a very, very short man, though this feels very, in its description, feels very much like a time traveler, because they said he just looked like a really short guy, but he had like shoes that formed to his feet, which kind of seems like to me to be those shoes that have the toe holds in it.
Yeah.
But anyways, the way he described it, but anyways, regardless, he got out of the ship and took a bucket and filled up water from the creek, but it was a bucket like nothing they'd ever seen before. It fanned out like a cone shape, and so it suggested it may have been a funnel. So if it, that could be unlocked at the bottom, and that could go along with your theory whether or not they need water, or could it even be used as fuel, right?
Yeah,
So,
propulsion of some sort. Yeah.
So here's another case where that water theory it can be put to use there. So I think it's a very, very good theory.
Yeah. So who knows? I think it's just another one of those things where, again, when you start to look at all of the things together, and then the corroborating circumstances of those events, it starts to paint a picture, right? So
right. And well, you think about the Roswell incident, and near Roswell is like no water. I mean, and maybe that's why it crashed. It's like there is not like, man, it's like it's one of those areas where you got to go pretty far to get to water if you're going to go anywhere. So, well, again, I'm with you 100%. But I like the idea that it might be fuel. And it's like, and if it ran out of fuel, it was like, oh crap, because I think the closest bit of water is closer to Carlsbad, and that's, it depends which direction he was coming from.
Well, and I think, it's also interesting to think about, that's where there's no water now, but was there water in 1947?
And I'll be honest with you, I would say there was probably less water then, because now they've got dams set up, and they've got some lakes and some things like that. I would bet you there was less water then. So, but that's just an opinion. There's absolutely no educational basis behind that.
Yeah.
Just putting that out there.
Yeah. So yeah, like you say, if they were on their way to get water and crashed, then yeah. But a couple other interesting things that I found when doing the research is there was actually some similar reports both before and after the original Flatwoods sighting. So 1 week before the Flatwoods event, a Weston woman and her mother encountered a same or similar creature. The younger woman was so frightened that she needed hospitalization after the event. Both also reported the noxious odor. Years later, writer John Keel, comes up again, interviewed a couple who claimed that on the evening following the original sighting, at 10 to 15 miles to the southwest, they encountered a 10-foot tall creature emitting a foul odor. It approached their stalled car, then returned to the woods. Moments later, a luminous, pulsating sphere arose from the trees and ascended into the sky.
Now, the first encounter there you talked about, what day was that? Did that happen?
The first encounter is a week before the Flatwoods event. So the Flatwoods again was September 12th, 1952. So if you happen to have a calendar,
I have another sighting that happened September 13th, if you had heard about that one.
Yeah, that's the one I just talked about.
That's the one I was asking. So, because this goes into a little detail here. It's really interesting because one of the neat things is that it was near a creek called Strange Creek. So I find that very, very interesting. But they also, just synchronicity, I guess. But one of the other things that that they talked about too, of course, was that that horrible smell that created throat irritation and vomiting and nausea, which a lot of people say are telltale signs of like exposure to mustard gas and stuff. And you know, the first group experienced it, as did this couple and their child. So that's such a strange thing to happen, you know?
Yeah. Well, and so interesting tidbit. I looked it up real quick. Strange Creek runs into Birch River, which is where the other guy reported seeing something else. So it's just all related there. And and again,
about the Strange Creek sighting with George and Edith is that they did see its spade-shaped hood, but this time it wasn't covered, and they said that what they saw was reptilian and bony, that it dragged its lizard-like hand across the hood of the car before drifting away in the woods. Which is like extra scary.
Right, exactly.
Oh,
it's interesting how none of those accounts made it into the designs for the Flatwood Monster.
Yeah, it's like, you know, you wonder why. Yeah, why? But I guess because that one's the famous one. That's the one that got the press, as it always does.
Yeah.
Which is where most of these things get their names from, are coined by journalists. So
right. So, so getting into the whole skeptical side, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it says that I found basically they think that it was either a meteor or a meteor and an owl. So here you go, Keith. There's your 10-foot owl.
Well, and that's exactly what Project Blue Book, the show, surmised as well. But even then, it almost just seemed like he was just saying that to just stop the media nonsense, is almost in some ways, I guess. I don't know. But yeah,
right.
There's just not an owl that's that big. And I guess the way Project Blue Book says it, it's sitting on top of a tree, but so much more, of that, it just doesn't fit. An owl's not going to shoot orange beams out of its eyes. It's not going to move all 6 to 10 feet of it back towards the orb. I mean, it's like, I don't know.
Well, and that's the thing, they say that the owl's eyes are reflective, and that's what you saw. But that reflective is not projecting a beam. That's completely two different things. Yeah. So
that seems like a scanning device to me.
Well, and what's really interesting is that they all got sick.
Yeah, every one of them. And yet here's 7 people, not even including the other people that saw that meteor or whatever it was that evening, which there's quite a few people that just saw it and never, went after it. But it's like you got all these people, yet it's not enough. Like, when is it enough? How many witnesses do you need to say something is legit, especially when you have adults? You have a military person that was there, and a mother. It's like, she's not going to lie and make her kids go crazy. It's like, I don't know. That, how I am.
Yeah.
I hate that people think that people just say this stuff to make money, because they did not make money. So,
well, so here's an actual quote of the description from the original article. It says, they said it had a black shield affair in the shape of an ace of spades. Behind it, and wore what looked like a pleated metallic shirt or skirt. Mm-hmm. Here, the black shield was actually an outer helmet covering the red head, which was actually an inner helmet. The pleated metallic skirt was in reality the lower torso, and that's surrounded by thick pipes. So, again, still feels very mechanical, I guess is the right word. Mm-hmm. And not really, I don't know that I would classify it as a monster if it's a mechanical item, Right.
Well, yeah. I guess it just depends on what the definition of monster is, right?
Well, that's true. Definitely wouldn't classify it as a cryptid, though.
No, not at all. At least I wouldn't.
I mean, I'm not a cryptozoologist, so I don't
know. Maybe that's more for our buddy Joe Purdue or some folks like that. But yeah, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. It seems more to me along the lines of alien or robot or something else like that. So.
Yeah, and just there are several different accounts or interviews with Miss May and the boys, and they all kind of corroborate each other's story that it seemed like it was a mechanical thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Miss May actually said it looked like a mechanical man.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, it's just really interesting. Now, I would like to briefly touch on the theory that you have, that you came up with in our recent trip to
and
Point Pleasant.
you'll hear a little bit of this when we get to the interview with Les Odell, something that I had thought about was, especially along this lines, if this was a ship that did indeed crash, if we look at the orange lights and say that orange could be misconstrued for red, if indeed this had crashed, here we are, we're not essentially we're like 2 hours east or so of Point Pleasant. What if indeed the Mothman was the Flatwoods monster, right? That's my theory, is that here we are, what'd you say, 12, 13 years prior? And
right.
It had slowly had to make its way to Point Pleasant because across the way there, or in the TNT area and all that stuff, was this power plant. And it was a place that it could go to get power, not only for its ship, but for itself, to fix its suit or things like that, which, hell, maybe it was trapped in its suit, but that could also fit why some people swear they saw it hunting or eating, because it indeed needed to feed, it needed to eat. And that it finally, after a long time, made its way over to Point Pleasant, and then spent that year, near that power plant trying to get, whatever it could find, or even being, as we know, that TNT area is literally next to the river. So again, here's the Ohio River, which is a giant source of water. And so what if, and then it gathered up everything that it needed within that year, which is why in Point Pleasant, we never saw any sightings, though other people will say the sightings throughout the years in other places like Chicago and Minnesota and things like that were still Mothman. But let's just say, for the sake of this, that he didn't, that he got the power that he needed and took off, and that they were one and the same creature. That's my little theory.
Well, and to hear that the Flatwoods monster described as being a mechanical thing, that like it had an outer helmet and an inner helmet, and also hear it described as being reptilian inside the mechanical piece. And I'm going to back myself up here a little bit and say, what if Mothman is the reptilian inner person? The inner...
And it could be because, the sightings were really happening in November, was when they were really big, started out. That's cold even in West Virginia. And if it is indeed reptile, if the reptile is very similar to reptiles here and was cold-blooded, maybe it needed this suit to stay warm as well. That's something considered. And that's why it stays in the suit, as a way to possibly breathe better or to simply stay warm. So...
Well, and also when you think about the possibility that if it was going, because it is really close to the Ohio River, if it was going there for water, and also the suits may have gotten better over the last 13 years, right?
Or
13.
Or it's two different suits. Like, if you're going to wear a space suit, right, you look at our astronauts, when they're in the ship, they're wearing something completely different than when they step outside.
Right.
Yeah. And so what if that was the case? We saw its kind of travel suit, and then, we get into Mothman, so to speak, and we're moving towards, and maybe it was able to repair and create its outside suit. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of, again, just the like you pointed out earlier, the whole naming for a lot of these things is done by a journalist.
Yeah.
So some journalist gave it the name Mothman, which forever has, placed it in the stigma of being a cryptid because it has the name Mothman.
And
but,
as with Flatwoods Monster.
Right. Right, exactly. So, who actually knows what it was? And I think that's something that you and I try to do a lot, and we just encourage everybody else to as well, to not just accept everything at face value.
Right.
To
question. And the cryptid idea, I think, is more than just being called Mothman. The fact that everyone described it as a bird as well, I think plays into that as well. But yeah.
Well, they described it as something that flew, right? So
yeah. Well, some people said
time,
they saw feathers or things like that. So, yeah.
Yeah. But it also could be reflective tiles.
Exactly. So, and again, just like Flatwoods. So who knows if it was a monster when it could have literally simply just been a robot or just a piece of machinery that was able to move. So
exactly.
Yeah.
So that kind of wraps up the whole what I was able to find on the general story and reports of the Flatwood Monster. We heard a really good, interesting account from the operator at the museum, which you'll hear in the interview. That's really interesting. But
so this comes from Les Odell. He was volunteering that day, actually, because the main guy at the Braxton, West Virginia Visitors Bureau, who everyone usually gets to talk to, was not in the day that we could come. But boy, am I glad we got to talk to Les. Les himself is a part of some ghost hunting groups and some things like that, which I'll give you guys all the info as soon as this interview is done. We hit him up, and we hit him hard with some questions and some things like that. But just check out the things he had to say.
So here we are with
Les Odell.
Les Odell with Braxton County.
I'm actually just here filling in for Andrew today.
Okay.
Andrew owns the museum. It's Braxton County Monster Museum, or Flatwoods Monster Museum.
Okay.
And the tourism board or office, I guess you could say.
Yeah. This is in Sutton, right?
Yeah.
Not in actual Flatwoods.
No, we're downtown Sept.
Yeah. And so I was just curious, what are your thoughts on the whole idea and concept of Flatwoods? I mean, how do you feel about it? Do you feel like the Flatwoods Monster was legitimate, or
Well, if you go by the actual witnesses like Eddie and Freddie May, they're adamant they know what they saw.
Yeah.
Some of what you do read online might be off and skewed a little bit, as far as some of the facts. But they wholeheartedly said it was a mechanical thing. It wasn't really a biological thing. But they believe wholeheartedly that they to this day say they seen it.
I just do you though, and I'm not this is not necessarily whether or not this reflects on the museum, but how are your personal feelings are?
I've done research. I believe something happened.
Yeah.
I mean, and the way they portrayed what they've seen, I believe they've seen something. So I can't discredit what they.
Yeah.
But I've done some research, and I know there were several meteors and stuff that night.
Mm-hmm. Lots of people. Lots of people were seeing UFOs and meteors.
Yep. So I can't. For me, I think it's a good possibility, and it's a good possibility, no, because
you can't say it's no, but you can't say it's which makes it unknown, which makes it cool, right?
Right.
So.
Now, you born and raised here?
Born and raised.
So now, did you grow up hearing stories about it and stuff
well,
like that?
I'm born and raised in West Virginia, but I actually live in Marion County.
Oh, okay.
I just come down for the day. But I have heard the stories for a long time. And
we're Kentucky, so we hear about Kentucky goblins a lot.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of different stories in West Virginia, whether it's Mothman, the Flatwoods Monster, the Grafton Monster, the Vegetable Man out of Marion County, all that stuff I've heard a lot. I've delved in a lot of it over the years. So.
That's cool, man.
Have you ever actually had any personal experiences of any of that nature?
Even ghost related?
Yeah, ghost related, definitely. I've actually, right here in Sutton, have investigated 2 different places. One's right next door and one's across the river. One is the Heyman House. It was pretty interesting. I recently did an overnight there by myself. Got several good things come across what I call the spirit box and portal.
Yeah.
The first time I was there, I was actually leading it was not leading, but I had a couple that they were having a little event, like a public hunt.
Yeah.
So I was there, and a couple of people actually attached themselves to me because they never done it before. So I was actually walking them around, and we were in one of the rooms up on the second floor, and the couple was sitting on the bed, and I was sitting in the chairs doing EVP sessions. I seen the guy turn and look, like if he was sitting where I am, turn to his right. As he moved, I turned to my left, and as I turned to my left, something jabbed me real hard in my right ribs.
Oh, wow.
Just like a finger went right in my ribs.
Yep.
It's probably my grandpa. He was doing all that.
Didn't we have something like that happen to one of you guys last night, right?
Yeah, I mean,
You got pushed or
I
poked?
felt like I got like the back of my shirt tugged.
Oh, that's
as we
right.
were
That's
going
right.
into one of the TNT domes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things we talked to Jeff over at Mothman Museum, and we were talking to him and kind of looked at a comparison. That here's a Flatwoods Monster around a decade before Mothman. And if you really look at it, there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah, there can be.
And it makes you wonder if Mothman is something, it's an ET or something along those lines. It's like, did he crash here and find his way because he needed power at the power plant and took a long time to find his way there, right? Could it be one and the same,
Well, being that I run a Facebook page where people call me about stuff, and I've went out and investigated a lot of different things in West Virginia. One of them that really sticks out to me was an older gentleman, which has passed away now, which told me a story that when he was a kid, him and his brother, they noticed that their pony that was out in the backyard, they had it tied up in the back. It was kind of like a little farm, but they had the pony in this little backyard. And because he showed me where the property was and stuff. And there's a small creek, and then there's a hillside with trees like you normally see here. And he told me that when he was a kid, the pony would go nuts, just go crazy. They tried to figure out what it was, and they went to talking to neighbors and stuff and said if they seen any bear around or nothing. They said no. Well, they started noticing this odd-looking track. Like, they said almost like a three-toed looking track, and it looked like it had been dragging something. And he said the only thing I can relate it to is it was dragging a chain. He said that's what I can think is a chain. And so he went to the neighbor. They went to the neighbor's house, and the neighbor was like, "No, I hope nobody is messing around my chains, So he went to the barn, and none of his chains were missing. So him and his brother, they were about 3 or 4 years apart. I think one was like 14, one was like 17, somewhere in that neighborhood. Said that they were going to stay up. If the pony made any racket, they were going outside.
Yeah.
Well, the pony started making a racket. His brother grabbed a 12-gauge shotgun. He grabbed an old flashlight. He said, "I want it to fair." He said, one of them little push-button silver flashlights. And he says, they was going out the door, their sister. He said, "Well, I'm going with you. I'm going with you." They didn't want her to come, but she ended up coming with them. And they went out. The pony's raising all kind of hell outside. So they decided they're going to walk across the creek and go up the hill. As they started up the hill, they could hear something coming down the hill. He said, we thought, well, maybe it was a bear.
Yeah.
He said, then I saw the figure. He said, from where I was standing, he said it had to be at least 8 feet. He said, I was looking up, so it probably wasn't that tall, but he said it seemed to be 8 feet. But it had 2 red glowing eyes, so about anywhere from 8 to 10 inches apart, about that big. It had pretty much no neck. It just seemed like his head set down on the shoulders.
Yeah, same thing.
And what caught me, because at first I'm thinking, because you hear the Bigfoot stuff about,
Right.
What caught me is when he said it come down the bank, it didn't walk. It waddled down the bank. And if you listen to some of the old Mothman accounts, you hear that waddle.
Yeah.
The first waddle.
Absolutely.
And it wasn't black in color. Most of the older accounts you hear first were either a grayish color or brown.
Yeah.
Well, that's the way he described this thing with the big red eyes. And he's like, it scared him to live in daylights out of him. And he yelled for his brother that was supposed to be standing beside him, said, "Shoot it." He said, "Shoot it." And he said, when I turned around, my brother was running. He had dropped the gun.
Yeah.
And when he went to run, he realized his sister wasn't there either. He found out she passed out. He just fainted and was laying on the ground.
Yeah.
He grabbed her up and ran down the hill. And after I talked to him for a while, I said, you know what Bigfoot is? He's like, yeah. He said, I've seen the Patty film, years ago. I said, did it look like that? And he's like, no. I said, do you know what Mothman is? And even though we're in West Virginia, there's a lot of people don't know what Mothman is.
Yeah.
And he was in his 70s. He's like, I have no idea what that is. And I was like, well, when did this happen? And he told me when it happened. And by the, when he was born, and when he said it happened, it had to happen in the early 60s. Not 66, 67.
Yeah.
This was like 62 or 63.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's what we're finding too. Like, because to bring up the next question to talk about Gray Barker a little bit.
Yeah.
Is I'm reading a lot of his books right now. Finished Silver Bridge, and right now I'm reading the one that's over there. And of course, opens with Flatwoods Monster.
Right.
And but it's interesting looking at his older books to see. He even talks about a Batman in that book that sounds to me like Mothman, even though it was probably in Washington or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not the first time, and I don't even think some of those guys even correlated the old information they found 10 years earlier
Right.
to equate it to.
Yeah. I mean, there are definitely similarities, and it could be that he crashed and had no way of getting wherever he was going.
Yeah.
It just got stuck foraging for whatever he could find, or
Yeah,
he could
I mean,
find or whatever.
he could have broken his wings. I mean, had to repair though. I mean, who knows? Because I mean, I'm not one that believes the cryptid theory as much as I believe kind of spacesuit kind of type
Like
thing
guy
for
in-
me.
guy in
Guy in a suit or something
Well,
like that.
there's even people that claim or have a theory, or I don't know what we'll call it, conspiracy theory, but a theory that's why Indrid Cold was here.
We
to
talked
track
about
down
that quite a bit.
Mothman and take him back wherever he come from.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, we've thought about that, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Mothman was trying to get into
Yeah.
the cult
Yeah.
because he seems more like the bounty hunter.
Yeah. Now you're talking about the Gray Barker. Have you ever been to the Gray Barker files?
No, we were just talking about that.
We're gonna have to do another trip.
Yeah, next time. It's a little far out on what we've got planned, but I really want to go. We just did interviews with Alan Greenfield, who's good friends with him, and we learned a lot of like private cool stuff, and
Yeah.
so it's made me a new super fan
Really
of Gray
interested.
Barker.
Well, he has. I've been to these files. That's
I wanna go.
where those few things come from over there.
Mhm.
There's 6 file cabinets full, and it's everything you'd imagine. Now I will say this: there are some shady stuff with Gray Barker. He did fudge some stuff,
Right.
and you can see that from his files.
Oh yeah.
One of my favorite things from the Gray Barker files, which I have a copy of it at home, is a letter from John Keel that actually John Keel is basically chewing out Gray Barker for screwing up his investigation at Mothman.
Yep.
Point
And Alan
Pleasant.
talked to us a lot about that too.
Alan talked about Ray prank calling John Keel.
Yeah.
Yeah, that him and Jim Mosley would call and be like, "It's Indrid Cold." He was like, you hear Keel talk about how Indrid would call him and call him and call him. He's like, it was more than likely Gray smoking some pot with Jim and making prank calls. And he's like, and they talked about it. It sucked because I'm a comedian,
Yeah.
and so it's hard to be taken seriously, even though we take what we do very seriously.
Yeah.
And Gray kind of was his worst own enemy by doing hoaxes and doing things, but then would turn around and be so very serious
Yeah.
about stuff. So
I mean, like the Grafton Monster. If you look into the paperwork that he has in there, I've looked at his notes where he was sending his telephone, writing down all the notes about what Cockerell was telling him, and the letters back and forth are in those files. And
yeah, he's meticulous.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean that's one thing I learned is how he was one of the very first people on the scene for Flatwoods, which is really fantastic.
Yeah.
And just makes his perspective even better, especially since I read Silver Bridge before I read the other one. So it's interesting to go backwards. It's really neat.
I was curious. You may not know, or you may know. I noticed that one of the boys that that solved the line and reported and went to see. His last name is Heyer. I don't know if it's spelled the same or if it's in relation to Mary Heyer, the journalist in Point Pleasant.
That I'm not sure. I mean, I think he has a picture over there of him, and I think it's H-Y-E-R.
Hers is H-Y-E-R. And I don't know if his is the same. If it's H-I-E-R.
Okay.
So I have to look and see.
Yeah.
But I just, I know that, we're from Kentucky, or I'm from Kentucky, and there's a lot of family names in areas like that. And so if it's a family name, it's very possible that they're related. It would just be interesting if there's like two people in the same genealogical chain that were really big in Mothman and also really big in.
I mean, like you're talking about the names. They can, from region to region, they may be a family, but they'll delineate from one spelling to another.
Yeah.
Even my name, where I'm, my name is spelled a certain way with an apostrophe. Well, I have relatives that are few removed.
Yeah.
The apostrophe's gone, and then there's a small d.
Right.
But we're still family.
Yeah.
And I've even a few years ago, or it was last year, no, 2 years ago, I talked to a gentleman, where I was kind of buying some stuff, antique stuff off of him, and I bought some stuff for the Moundsville Museum, the Archives of Afterlife. That was he's into World War II stuff, so I bought a couple jackets. Well, both brothers were in the same war, but they had two different names, but come from the same mom and dad, because when they put it on the paperwork, when they were born, something was goofy, and they just never changed it.
Just never changed it. Yeah, I've seen that.
Because it was a hassle.
One of the last things I want to touch on is, they talked about Flatwoods in Project Blue Book TV show. How do you guys handle and talk about that here? Because at the very end they essentially said, "Oh, it's just a damn owl," right?
Well, for the first part, that was kind of upsetting for some people.
Especially because Hynek was all about it in real life. Like he's.
I really, like I said, I think that show was really to try to discredit Project Blue Book. It wasn't to reinforce what Hynek found. It was to discredit.
And the way they portrayed the family here, the May family, as being gun-toting hillbillies, was way off.
Yeah, everything we had read, it just felt so off. And the show's great, but it's like,
I mean, that's something that we actually talk about a lot.
Yeah.
Is that just the automatic discount if you come from a more rural part of anywhere. Just automatically you must be a dumb hillbilly or whatever. And it's just
even. I mean, we live in Louisville, but it's like even then we still get that just being from Kentucky.
The first time I met people from like Boston, they looked down to see if I had shoes on.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I moved to Ohio for a short period, which years ago, just for a short time, and Ohio's not much different than here.
No.
But by God, the West Virginia stigma was there, because I had one person come up to me and say, "You're from West Virginia?" I'm like, "Yeah." And they said, "Do you know why the cows have two shorter legs down there?" And I'm like, "No." I said, because they're like, they stand on the hills all day long.
That's so dumb. I get it though. I mean, it's like I'm originally from Toledo, Ohio, and like I tell you what, the Toledo hillbillies are worse. And the Michigan, because my family's all from Michigan too. Those Michigan lumberjack hillbillies are. I prefer my southern ones. Give me that. That's my people. Much kinder. But yeah, well, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. I mean, it's really good to hear a local perspective about what's going on and what went on, and really appreciate the story about the guy from the early '60s, because that just helps with our kind of theory that they might be related.
And then also one more time, let us know your name and then the Facebook page, because we have a lot of West Virginia listeners, and so we can get them. Hopefully, they can check out your page and have a place to check out.
It's Les Odell, and it's it's WV, Cryptids and Strange Encounters.
Okay.
I collect stories from all over West Virginia.
I'm already familiar with it, so.
Somebody calls me, I go out and check them out. And if it's Bigfoot related, I go out and check it out. I just had somebody from Clay County call me and said they saw a 5 foot tall black creature with red eyes on their property in the past 5 months, at least a half dozen times.
Wow. Well, we became friends with a guy named, you might know him, Joe Perdue from
Joe,
and he of course talked great about you guys and stuff like that, and we just
interviewed him a couple weeks back over the Bigfoot sighting that they had. That was remarkable. And hopefully we'll see him tonight. But anyways, just again, thank you so much, man. That was fantastic. And we'll be tagging you guys, and we'll tag your page and send people there, because we got, like I said, we got a lot of listeners from West Virginia. So
thank you.
But we appreciate you. Thanks, man.
All right, again, we want to give a great big thank you to Les Odell and the Braxton County Visitors Bureau and the Flatwoods Monster Museum. These are located there in Sutton, West Virginia. We want to give a shout out to the Spot restaurant where we went to in Flatwoods to get some grub. Where we got some grub there and took a couple pictures of their monster chairs. But absolutely get out to Braxton County. There's a lot of stuff to do there. And Les, again, you were the best. He is a co-founder of Midnight Talkers Paranormal Group, as well as co-founder of the West Virginia Cryptids and Strange Encounters. So they hit all of that. And much like our friend Tori, they also will help connect people in that region to other types of monster hunters or ghost hunters or things like that, if they can't do it, or even put you in the direction of other people in West Virginia if you're not near them. So, but like I said, you can find both those groups on Facebook, as well as Braxton and the Flatwoods Monster Museum. For all things Braxton, go to braxtonwv.org. But yeah, what an absolute great experience that we had in Flatwoods. And
and I'll just say that everybody that we interacted with in the area was just so courteous and just really here we were, just two guys that were having a podcast, and they didn't hesitate to help us get some answers, ask some questions, think about things differently, whatever the case may be.
Yep, and we loved that. We absolutely loved that. And I guess. And of course, shout out to Santosh. He was there with us as well. So
yeah,
we're really going to get into his journey with us and all that on next week's Mothman episode.
So yeah, good call. Flatwoods Monster, good times.
Yeah, definitely.
Cannot wait to talk to everybody about Mothman. So we tried not to talk too much about everything that happened over the weekend and stuff, but
they're a little bit of a separate event really, because Flatwoods is like I said in the 50s, and then Mothman of course is like 10 or 11 years later in the 60s.
It's all one weekend for us, so it's like it's all in my head. But yeah, thank you again to the folks at the Braxton, West Virginia Visitors Bureau and the Flatwoods Monster Museum. If you guys want more information on what's going on there, go to Braxton WV. That's BraxtonWV.org. Go check out stuff, because there's more to do in Braxton than just the Flatwoods stuff. But though, like we said, they've got the big chairs and they've got the statue and all kinds of fun stuff. So get out there. If you're West Virginia, is just absolutely gorgeous. A lot of people are taking trips to the gully or whatever that place is called, where they do the whitewater rafting. Like, make it part of your trip. Check out Flatwoods. Check out Point Pleasant and all
and
that
especially stuff. Coming up in the next several weeks, the fall colors are going to be kicking in. And West Virginia, all those trees in the fall.
Take me home.
Yeah. No, don't sing it. I finally got it out of my head.
But before we get out of here, I've got an interesting listener story for you, because it's not our normal listener story. I've become acquaintances with the admin that runs Haunted History of Kentucky, Tonya. She loves our show. She loves our emphasis whenever we can do Kentucky stuff and get our listener stories from Kentucky people. Of course, we love our Kentucky folks. But she hit me up and sent me an urban legend, because that's something I'm always curious about as well. Is like, what type of, legend or lore or folklore does your little town or county or any of that have that people may not know about? So she sends me one, and it's going to sound funny, but it's Kentucky, okay? So deal with it. Excuse me. But this is the urban legend of Johnny Booger.
Okay.
Right, yeah. So Booger, ha ha ha. But we know that, they have different names, like haunts or haints is what they call, some of the Appalachian areas and things like that we'll call ghost haints. And there's just different things. And this is Johnny Booger. This comes from Knott County, Kentucky.
Okay.
So here is this urban legend. Johnny Booger was a healer, if you will. A lot of people that were sick or had sick children would go to him to be cured. His real name, however, was Johnny Young. He's buried in the Young Fork Cemetery on Lots Creek. Everyone during his lifetime swore that he could make things happen, such as making things appear out of thin air, then making them disappear again. And he even had the ability to make inanimate objects move and even kill certain animals just by pointing at them. He often talked about having such powers, and he said it bothered him greatly and scarred him greatly. He once proved to a lady that he could do what he says he could do. So he made a flock of sheep appear, and after she touched them and said she could feel them, he made them disappear into thin air. He, however, lost his powers one day after he started attending church and sleeping with a Bible under his pillow. Johnny was never able to use them again. Now, anyone in Knott County will tell you this tale, and most will tell you of an ancestor they had that was healed by Johnny or witnessed one of his miracles, and they then passed the story down through the generations until it reached them. So yeah, that's the story of Johnny Booger, essentially in a nutshell.
I wonder where the booger came from, because I didn't really hear any.
Well, I think booger is like an older term for like boogeyman. So that's what I think. I think that's where it kind of comes from. Because I feel like in I know in England they say bogeyman, but I also feel like at another point they say boogerman as well.
Well, I wonder if it's so. There's also a term that I've heard used from my Kentucky relatives, where you get somebody you boogered them.
Oh,
you know what I'm
really?
saying?
That's interesting.
So you hoodwinked, if you
will.
will.
Well, that would make sense for Johnny Booger then, because people thought he was a charlatan.
Yeah.
So that could make sense. I mean, your family is rooted in Kentucky,
Right.
Whereas mine's from Ohio, so you probably have a better. And Kentucky and West Virginia tend to share a lot of same.
So it makes me
stuff.
wonder if it's Johnny Booger because he was
considered a charlatan. Yeah, interesting. But yeah, thank you, Tonya, at Haunted History of Kentucky. If you guys are in Kentucky, if you're listeners here, make sure to join that group. It is a fantastic group filled with so many stories and urban legends and people sharing their encounters with ghosts and spirits in Kentucky. It's absolutely fantastic. Remember, you can send all of your stories, your listener stories, any experience that you've had with the paranormal, whether it be ghost, cryptid, UFO, alien, just anything weird or just a weird feeling or anything passed down from your family, send those to us, fearscapepodcast@gmail.com. Get onto fearscapepodcast.com and submit a sighting. We can do it through there. Or even on there, we have our Google phone number that you can call and leave us a message or text us your story.
You can even text us pictures and we can receive
send us
them.
pictures. But yeah, if you want to hear your own voice on here, go ahead and either send us a file or call that number and leave your story. You only got 3 minutes, but leave a voicemail for us and we'll get that story on the air for you. We are just all about sharing people's stories to show people, again, that they are not alone.
That's right.
So, but yeah, make sure to go check out FearScapePodcast.com for all things FearScape, as well as FearScapeMedia.com. We are starting a podcast network that's absolutely fantastic. Yep. We're going to have some updates and information coming out about that soon. We do have a brand new podcast getting ready to drop probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks. It's another one from me called Misters of the Dark, and paying homage to Elvira, the Mistress of the Dark. My buddy Lance Wayne and I are big horror buffs, and so we're going to be talking about all things horror, movies, toys, comics, everything, with different guests every week. So that's going to be part of the FearScape Media Network. It's going to be fantastic, so be on the lookout for all of that. And of course, check out our store, all the good stuff.
Yep, got a great new T-shirt out. If you haven't seen it, if you've listened to the Alan Greenfield episodes, we've got a great T-shirt out there for a spider rainbow.
Yep, we do. We have a spider rainbow shirt, so please check that out. That's fearscapepodcast.com/store. Check out our Patreon. Check out all the goodness. And but on that, we want to get out of here. Thank you guys for tuning in, as you usually do. We're here week after week because we love what we do, and we love that you guys care.
Yep.
So make sure to tune in next week. We're going to have a good show talking about our experience in Point Pleasant with Mothman and all of that jazz. And yeah, I'm ready to rock and roll. You ready to rock and roll?
I'm ready to rock and roll.
All right, well, let's go turn on the amps and get rocking. And I asked this the other day on Facebook, but do you remember when cities were made from rock and roll?
I do.
Those were the good old days.
Those were the good old days.
Yeah. So, anyways, we'll get out of here. This has been Stefan. I will catch y'all on the flip side.
This has been Josh. The truth is out there.
And remember, folks, hold those blankets extra tight because things tend to get spooky and weird when you're listening to FearScape. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
I'm so glad you were able to join us for that horrifying discussion. I hope they didn't frighten you too much. Tune in next week for even more research into the nightmarish and haunting creeps and spooks that we tell ourselves don't exist, but we know they do. Make sure you have your blankets, that you hold them extra tight. Next time on FearScape.
One evening in Flatwoods, a mother and boys saw a great light and heard a great noise. They ran to the hilltop, didn't know what they feared. It was there in the dark that the phantom appeared. Oh, phantom of Flatwoods, from moon or from Mars, maybe from God and not from the stars. Please tell us why you fly o'er our trees, the end of the world or an omen of peace. The size of the phantom was a sight to behold. Green eyes and red face, so the story was told. It floated in air with fingers of flame. It's gone with a hiss just as quick as it came. Oh, phantom of Flatwoods, from moon or from Mars, maybe from God and not from the stars. Please tell us why you fly o'er our trees, the end of the world or an omen of peace. The people were frightened, they started to pray. They were living in hopes of another new day. There's no end to this story, except just to say this world will go on, for it's written that way. Oh, phantom of Flatwoods, from moon or from Mars, maybe from God and not from the stars. Please tell us why you fly o'er our trees, the end of the world or an omen of